when paper. Here it is. Okay, so if you look at the when paper, all right, just as a quick quiz, you're reading through paper, you see this. Is it a book or an article?
It's a book.
It's a book. Automatically, you know it's a book. And so as you're reading something, you see things in italics, you're like, oh, this person wrote about a bunch of books. They wrote about some articles. Like, it's very helpful when you know the difference because it adds to your understanding of what's being written about. Okay, so this person did a great job here of using quotes and paraphrases and kind of blending them together. All right, oops, I forgot to say. Did anyone have time to look at this and did they find a quote and a paraphrase? Okay, so oops. Okay, so if you want to jump in, jump in. So here the author is going to gives us an introduction. So using the quote sandwich method, tells us the name of the book. The author is an American writer who has emerged as an indispensable voice in ethnic. So evaluates the author a little bit, tells us why this author is somebody that we should believe. That's like really helpful to the reader's understanding of what the author is about. The author is a voice in ethnic studies and literature. That's a description of the author's work that's kind of like a summary. And then in this sentence with this robust introduction, which helps the message, then there's a direct quote. So of all the information in this sentence, to not be plagiarizing, the only word we need is this Nguyen and the page number, because Nguyen will be the first word listed in the works cited. So to be at the 2.0 level, the person could have just dropped the quote in and then put Nguyen for in this parentheses. But to really be graceful and to be very astute with their use of sources, they told us something about the author, which helps add weight to what the author is going to say, this Nguyen person. And then in this next section, so the person's writing about what Nguyen wrote, and then they come and say, on this notion, Hugh Tam Ho Tai, author of, and then they bring another book in, states, and then they bring another quote in. So, and then they comment. So here's their other piece of bread. So this person is like giving their analysis here. But what's really cool is that the person used two quotes, some paraphrase, and summary, all in a short space, and also had the sources kind of talking to each other because they both are talking about the same issue. So, and then the author brings their perspective in. Okay, that's synthesis. That's the highest level. That's like the 4.0 level of the use of sources that I'm looking for on the final paper. And we'll talk more about that later today when we look at the rubric. Okay, so here's another one of these long introductions with a quote. I know I found a paraphrase in here. This one was kind of a paraphrase in the first half of the sentence and then a quote in the second half of the sentence, which was kind of cool and sophisticated. And then this is definitely a paraphrase. Eierman and his colleagues explicate the concept of collective memory and remark that it, and then they bring in a quote. And then according to these scholars, so summarizing the scholars that were just discussed, this is the summary here, collective memory is a process, blah, blah, blah. So we know when we look at the works cited that we're going to see these specific sources that I just talked about. Okay, so we see some of them. And here's that example of when you have two things written by the same person. We have the quiz. Let's see. The last quiz we did, there was two things that the person wrote and the writer was just using one thing. And then the question was, what did the parenthetical reference look like? And in that case, not only did the writer have to include the author's last name, they also had to include the title. All right. Do you feel like you talked enough about the writing warm-up? Do you need to talk more about it?
I understand what you mean.
Okay. The paper that is in there, this WEN paper, I told you before that this is a award-winning paper from MLA, so it's a really good example of a sophisticated use of sources. Okay, and it's by a college student, so it was a college student contest. So it is possible to do the sources well.